Chapter 32, Rome, Geography and Early Development. The Roman civilization flourished from about 700 BCE to about 476 CE. It began in ancient city of Rome, which is located in Italy, which happens to be a peninsula and islands in the southern Europe. The Romans have a myth about how the founding of their city came about. A princess gave birth to twin sons, Romulus and Remus. The boy's father was Mars, the Roman god of war. And the princess's uncle, the king, was afraid that the boys would grow up to take over the throne. And so he ordered his men to drown the twins in the Tiber River. However, before they drowned, a wolf rescued them. And when Romulus and Remus grew up, they decided to construct a town on the banks of the Tiber River where they had been found and saved. However, in a quarrel over who would rule the new settlement, Romulus killed his brother. Romulus became king, and he named the city Rome. Um, that is obviously a myth, uh, but it is in their culture. Um, their culture was greatly influenced by both of their neighbors, the Etruscans and the Greeks. The Etruscans' influence was in engineering and sporting events. In The Romans became excellent builders because they learned many techniques of engineering from the Etruscans, which the engineering is the science of building. Um, Two important Etruscan structures that the Romans adapted were the arch and the cunicles. Um, the Romans also adapted two bloody Etruscan sporting events: slave fighting, which when slaves were forced to fight during funerals, two slaves of the dead master would fight to the death with swords, small shields. After one of them killed the other one, they would be congratulated and then they would be executed. So both of them would see an untimely death. Also, chariot races. The charioteers or the drivers were strapped to their chariots. If the chariot overturned, they could be dragged underneath the wheels or trampled by the other horses. In fierce competitions, a lot of times they would have injuries or even death. The Etruscan sports gained popularity in Rome. Roman stadiums had thousands of slaves die fighting as gladiators. Um, Greek architecture was one important influence of the Romans. The Greeks constructed the Parthenon. The Romans used Greek designs in their own public buildings. They learned to use concrete to create even larger structures, such as the Parthenon. The Pantheon in Rome. Uh, to build the huge stadiums like the Colosseum in Rome, where the gladiators fought, and also the Circus Maximus, which was where they watched the chariot races. And it could seat over 200,000 spectators, very huge buildings. The Romans borrowed and changed the Etruscans' alphabet. The Greek and Romans had alphabets that were similar. They were used in all capital letters. Many Roman writers were inspired by Greek poetry and their myths, And so they used those and it inspired them to create some of their own. Both the Etruscans and the Romans admired the Greek pottery, painting, the sculptures. The Greek influence on Roman painting and sculpture was so great that a lot of times historians speak of a Greco-Roman art. Roman sculptures became especially skilled in creating lifelike portraits, such as real life like busts or statues that would show the head and the of shoulders of the soldiers. They also carved lifelike statues of their military leaders. The Greeks worshipped a number of gods and goddesses who were part of their everyday Greek life. The Romans also made many of the Greeks' gods theirs, but they changed them, especially their names. So the mighty Greek god Zeus became Jupiter in Roman culture. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, became Venus, and Ares, the god of war, became Mars. This is the notes for Rome geography and early development, and that's the end.